Alright, I decided I will do this one in English, just because it's good practice, I guess. Okay, so what I've been. It was quite a while ago I did the last one, and yeah, it's. I've been listening to some of these videos. Um, oh, and I figured it's quite good to see yourself speak. You see, you get an impression of how you're perceived in a way, because I mean we all have quite we all have flaws. I mean, I realize I'm not the best improviser in speaking, at least not if you want to entertain a public or someone watching and keep the pace up. That's not my thing really, or at least it's not yet my thing. Maybe I could be good in it, good at it, but I'm not. I tend to think when speaking, but at the same time, I think that it really, yeah. Anyway, I don't know. Well, I guess I should talk about what I have been doing the last couple of days, and I have been. I visited my parents actually. It was quite a while ago, last time, and I've been thinking today quite much. I've been thinking about lots of stuff. I've been thinking about how to optimize really life, you know, optimize for lots of things. I mean, it's hard for me to decide how much to put effort in optimizing external things for optimizing my attitude and what should I say, how productive I am, and how much I should focus on pure attitude and focus. And that's what in the Swedish ones before. That's what I've been focusing on quite many videos. Besides just, although most of them are just reasoning about lots of things, but I decided that I had to. I mean, I think that's true for everyone in life when they go around and they. Sometimes things are working terrific and sometimes it's not. Sometimes there are a lot of obstacles and you're kind of stuck. You're not stuck, but you're and you're not in that really positive state, positive mood, and you want to get out of it. And I often, and I, what it spoke about then in those videos was that it's really much about attitude, how you not only how you perceive things, but how you approach them. Really, if you approach them with anxiety, like confusion, and because it me as a person, I'm really much thinking about stuff. I try to get to the essence of things. I really have an intellectual interest in things I want to understand. And that is easy to start to frame things as if they're too complicated to understand, which is actually the nature of things. They are really complex, and especially if you think about, like, I'm really ambitious really in trying to understand lots of things, and I want to have as good and as positive impact as I can have in the world, and that makes you kind of humble and realize that you're really bad at taking rational decision in a really complex world, because it is really complex. It's not it's in many ways the world is just as it is. If you accept like scientific worldview, it's still right, quite simple. But when you go about in life and try to handle yourself and where you want to be and what you want to accomplish, you quite soon stumble into obstacles on your way to your goals and on your way to your achievements in life. And when you do that, it starts to get complicated to navigate yourself and really know what to do with your day, because your day is actually what you do with your life, and that is a complicated question. Although it is also true that many of us start to write down goals. I've actually been quite lazy in that. I just sort of have a clue of what I want to achieve, and I did earlier. I oftentimes write down goals and that kind of stuff. But since I've changed my mind quite often, you could say that that's a bad thing, but it's also a good thing to throw out bad ideas. And it's really easy to get stuck in bad ideas. And but keeping focus on where you want to go, I think is really, when you know it, because that's a process, but when you know it, I think it's really good to keep focusing on that goal and that vision. But it's still complicated to know how to navigate your day and your near time future, so that you can optimize for that goal. And that's a common theme in all my recent videos, like what you do with your day, what you put into it, how are you making progress. And I've been focused on many different things, and I think some of them have been quite centered around well, it's not, how should I put it? I've been, for example, I've been always wanting to be. I tend to think about your day and long term as sort of a compounding effect. It's not easy to achieve success and achieve whatever you want in life. It's not easy to just think just don't happen. And so I've often thought about it in terms of a compound effect, that if you do something day after day after day, if you put a certain amount of time, you put away a certain amount of time for some specific subject or activity, make sure you do it basically every day, then the compound effect will be quite great after a while. But like, for example, these videos, I tried to, when I heard the advice first time, or when I get reminded I should continue this practice, which was basically 1 or 2 weeks ago, I think 2 weeks maybe, then I heard like do 5 minutes each week, and I sort of got, when I really started, it turned out I could speak for quite a while. It ended up being hour-long videos, but yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, it's good to practice. And since I'm basically a quite introverted person, I tend to think a lot and not really, especially when there are a group of people, more than just two of us, me or someone I'm talking to. I'm always the listener, always trying to understand, and if I'm not interested, I'm silent, basically. and I don't direct the conversation in most often. And so it's good practice to express yourself. And I think really that's true for everyone, and that's just something I just want to focus on more, that if you, whatever you want to achieve, it's always good to express your thoughts and influence people in a good way. And how you do that is basically, you can practice talking, but especially if you're already talking a lot, I guess it's good to direct how you're talking about things. Be conscious about how you approach speaking, really. And it comes from someone who is, well, you could probably not say I'm a good speaker, but I'm at least not terribly dumb. I try to be rational. I try to well, to be honest, I am not really proud of what I produced this long in the video. It's been quite easy talk, but many of the other videos I have in Swedish, I've tried to touch on subjects that are quite, at least how I perceive it, they're quite deep, and they're interrelated subjects from many disciplines, academic disciplines, in order to get a picture of where the world's at and where we're going, to be actually take charge of our own destiny, doing what we want to do. I think that's quite interesting and crucial to think about. But in this video, I have not touched on it, and I'm not. I should have put. I'm not really that confident in speaking good English, in the sense that I really stumble on the words and expressions, even though I'm much more comfortable than I've been earlier in life, basically because I've lost 2.5 years. I've basically been on the internet and reading books, and everything is basically in English. At least I would guess that 80% is in English, but I'm not producing. I have been writing in English. No, actually, I've not been writing. I have been writing in English from time to time, but it's the same. It's basically 90%, 95% Swedish I've been writing. But I've realized I have a really bigger vocabulary in English than I had 2.5 years ago, or even beyond that. I'm so much more confident in expressing myself in English. But when I speak, I do not. Actually, my mouth is not used to it. I think earlier when I did some of these videos, before I got reminded about it, I just kind of these book summaries, and I did some in English, and I think during that period I was much better than in expressing myself in English, and it's been a while, so I'm really trying to get better at it. But so what could I? Well, this is really a theme that I'm thinking about a lot. What I'm going to talk about now, it's for those who listen to the Swedish videos, will feel like I'm harping on this theme again and again and again, but I think it's so disgustingly important, in lack of better words. It's so important that it is so damn important to not forget about it. And the theme is what you do now. And well, you're watching this video, and I'm not saying that this video is, well, of course I think it's quite important because I'm talking about the theme that I think is most important, but my point is not to say that I'm the best and brag about my own insights. That's not why I say the present is important, but the present is important because it dictates what you do with your day, and what you do with your day or your this hour, this minute, that dictates what you do with your life. Basically, it's one of all these days that you add up in your experience in life that basically determines your outcome in life, or whatever your life would be, which is basically the most important thing that you have. And if you're saying, well, the most important thing is basically how other people's life are. If you have an altruistic approach, it's still really important what you do if you want to have as positive impact as possible on their lives. Then it's basically still the same question. What you do with your life, what you do with your existence, what you do with your time now, right now, this day, this hour, this minute, second, nanosecond. Where's your thought at? What are you thinking about? And that's so profoundly important in determining your basically everything in your life. And I've come to appreciate so much, so I'm sometimes afraid that I will focus on it so much that I will forget to focus on the things that actually would give me what I want in life. See what I mean? I'm so obsessed with this thought sometimes. Well, I'm not. I shouldn't say that I'm. Well, actually, I do think about it throughout the day many times. Although I'm not. I don't say I'm sitting in a chair and just thinking, what am I doing? Even though that's what you're doing in meditation, which I have practiced. And actually, I had a pause in meditation for basically 2 weeks, I think, but 3. But now I picked it up again. But I'm only doing it very short amount. But still, I'm not meditating all day. I'm not thinking what I'm thinking all the time. But I am really aware to not let my attention go to somewhere I don't think is good for me in my long term, in the long run. But at the same time, it's not to say that the decisions are easy in respect to where you should direct your attention. And in order to know where to direct your attention, you basically need knowledge. And knowledge you can get from the internet or books or people. And that's basically what most of us people are actually already are doing during their lives, or if they're working at a job or something. And that's the downside of having a job. And actually, I would argue in education too, because if you're not knowing what you will use your knowledge for, and not determined to remember everything later than in the exam, and let it have an impact in your life and what you will do with your life, then you're really missing the question. You're not optimizing for your life. At the same time, I have to say that I am really troubled that if this insight is so profound, and if I'm so good at emphasizing it, why am I not more successful than I am? Why am I not accomplishing the goals I'm pursuing without saying what they are really? That's not the focus of this conversation, and that's a troubling thought for me, because, and I would argue that I have some insight into some things, but I definitely not have used that insight good enough to optimize my life and what I'm doing in order to achieve what I want to achieve. On the other hand, I do not say that I'm not doing useful stuff, or that I'm not have been doing useful stuff, but I'm talking about these things because partly I'm trying to figure out really life and what I'm doing, but also to try to remind you that if I'm able to give some advice, I'm not sure I can. I don't know how wise and smart you are, but I at least want to give my take on it, and I think it's illuminating to hear someone else think about what they do with their time. So that's why I'm talking about these things. And one of the things that I and I think it's true for basically everyone who tries to achieve something great, that on the path to greatness, let's say, you're not great when you're on the path. If you define great as the destination you want to be, sure, you can say that you're on your way to great and you are partly great, but I'm just saying that if you want to climb a mountain and you start to climb, it's sometimes hard to emancipate, that's the word, or just it's hard to understand really or grasp that even though you've not climbed the mountain yet, you can still be confident that you're on your way to climb it. But I would argue for most people seeking success, or at least climbing of a mountain is a really long journey. It's really easy to get discouraged, or it's easy to to fall prey to the thought that since I'm not on the top of the mountain, I haven't climbed the mountain. I'm not great because my goal is great. And if greatness is on the top of the mountain, I'm not there yet, then I'm not great. And well, you may say, okay, as long as I'm the path to greatness, that's great, right? But I don't think that's the case for most people trying to achieve extraordinary outcomes, because I think, well, at the same time, it's also true that those who actually pursue these things have enough confidence that they are on the path and that they actually have this, should we say, positive view of how that they are actually on the path to greatness. But I also think it's true that many of them lose sight of the goal, and I will include myself there. And to be honest, I do doubt, and I tend to doubt maybe too much sometimes. Basically because when I listen to wise people, many of them say that you should not a lot of these things today, like entrepreneur mindset, you have to think about that it's possible and so forth. And I really believe that in one way, but when I really listen to some really wise people, I also hear that it's a very common mistake to think too much of yourself. You have so high excessive self-regard that you're not able to make rational decisions along the way. And that's really, how should I put it, that's not something you want to be bad at, making rational decisions. And I'm really stuck on this point right now. I'm trying to figure out, because there is really two truths that are each other's throat, basically. Because yeah, you want to be rational. You don't want to think irrational about yourself, but at the same time, in order to achieve a success and extraordinary outcomes, you can't doubt yourself too much, because if you do, you won't really progress. You will just remain in the shallows. So and another theme I've been talking about, like in the Swedish ones earlier, I mentioned an American really famous wise person, Charlie Munger, and he's one of those who made me doubt sometimes, because he talks about this excessive self-regard, over-optimism and so forth. And he said that the key to happy life is low expectations. And it's counterintuitive when he's also talking about success, really, and how do you achieve good outcomes. And he's really much into multidisciplinary skills, all the basic ideas in the academic disciplines and so forth. And I have a difficulty, as I said, reconciling believing in yourself and what you're pursuing, and on the one hand, and with not overestimating your own abilities. And I'm really stuck there, because all my life, at least since I am talking about this too, I took a break from my studies in a top business school in my country, basically the most elite place in elite education in the country. And when I did that, up to that point, I've always been really ambitious in respect to getting good grades and excel in athletics, that I've been so determined to I've always been unsatisfied with my accomplishments. That may sound depressing, and to be honest, it is in some ways, but it's also an indication that I've always made sure to have a duty to my better self, as Charlie Munger put it once, to be better than you were. As actually he says to be wiser than you were when you woke up. And even though I was more like achieve more than you achieved yesterday, and I was often optimizing for grades and for what's it called? Athletics. And when I said, I mean specifically actually track and field. That was what I was doing. And so basically exercising 6 days a week, hard, and studying basically all the time that I had that was not in school, and exercise for athletics. So I was really determined to achieve really high, but I did not. I was always unsatisfied, and I'm bringing this up because I think that I've come to a place where because after I took that break, and I still have a break in some sort, I've done some things too, but I've started to be more and more ambitious, really. Not in terms of grades or in terms of athletic ability, because that's something I devalued. It's not as important in respect to, it really depends, because I've been thinking a lot exactly what I want to do, and that's not, as I said, the topic of this conversation right now, but since I have so high goals and of achievement, I tend to feel doubt due to these high goals, and I tend to get stuck in thinking about these kind of thing. I try to, and it's really part of a process, because during these 2.5 years since I took a break from this education, I've started to formulate these goals, or at least ambitions and visions, where I want to be. But now, where I'm becoming to be more and more sure of that, I try to understand it more deeply in the context of this civilization and our society, how I can reconcile it, and also try to be humble that if my goals are not, and vision is not compatible with how the world works, I of course have to reevaluate them and be critical. But it's also true that lots of things can be achieved, and people who want to achieve something can do it if they have determination. But it's also true that you're still limited to laws of physics, basically, how the world works. You have to work with that in mind. So, and my issue is really this, because it was a long process for me to really get at the core where I wanted to go, what my vision was. And not only that, also how I was about to achieve that. And it's, since I'm really trying to evaluate if the path to that place is through education, or if it's through entrepreneurship, or if it's through social media, or there are a lot. You still have to make a living in some ways. I mean, you have to pay your bills, and you have to. And for a while, I was determined that I wanted to be really rich, but not due to. I had still, now I'm touching on what my vision is, but I'm still much more concerned of making the best for this civilization, really. What is my biggest contribution? What can it be? What am I good at? And because and this is actually another theme or thought, that since I'm so ambitious sometimes, I tend to doubt my abilities. But when I frame it as I did right there, what is the best I can do for this civilization? What's my best contribution? It's much easier to think about, because you're really doing something for someone else, for the civilization, let's say. So it's not really about your success. And I'm not sure I'm going to go into this topic too, but it's also true to think, interesting to think about selflessness, really, or ego is the enemy, as some people put it. And that is really, if you think about it, that some people even say that the self is an illusion. And to think like that, it puts the pressure off. But I try to figure out if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because one could make this case that you're just escaping brutal, harsh realities of your existence, which is accepting your own weaknesses and really feel the pain of them, because then you fix them. If you're just saying that the self is an illusion, well, I mean, do the pleasure from that, is that pleasure justified if you're evading your shortcomings and you know, but who knows? if it's an illusion. I really don't know, and but it's an interesting thought to play with, because if it makes you really happier and more passionate, and your overall contribution will be better if I think like that, maybe I should think like that. But that really, it's actually quite the same thing as if you're not believing in God and you figure out that you will live a better life if you believe in God. It's hard to believe if you only know that believing in it will make you get ahead just by believing it, even though it's believing in it is false or you doubt it. But anyway, I think that to be honest, I get stuck here, but to be honest, I think that when someone says that the self is an illusion, I mean, yeah, it's an illusion in the sense that, but the question is, what do we mean with this, that the self is an illusion? I mean, it's just something that we perceive, and you could get into consciousness and all these philosophical discussions, but in a way it's obvious that the self is an illusion if you think about it in terms of everyone is everywhere, they do their stuff, it's not something that's more essential with your existence than theirs, but at the same time you know that your consciousness is rooted in your brain, and then of course your consciousness will be centered around yourself. So I'm not really sure how I should think about that, but anyway, I've realized that is sometimes when I think about not that the self is an illusion, but yet that you really don't care about yourself, in the sense that you don't care what people think about you, because that's a really common issue for people, and that's part of the same thing. I mean, not thinking about yourself, not really thinking about your well, it is different things, but and that's also a thought. Should you think that you do not care about your own achievements, not only your contributions? I mean, because it is, as I've actually written today, when I try to organize my thoughts, it's a recurring theme among many people, like ego is the enemy, and identity is the way of, it's just your baggage of your experience, and you should focus on the process of becoming something. And also the thoughts of, did I say ego is the enemy, and selflessness, and this was something more I thought about in respect to this. Anyway, I think because we still have to get back to the, forget how I ended up talking about this, but it's still interesting to think about the core thing here. What you're doing with your day. Are you doing something that contributes to who you are and what you're trying to achieve? And what I am doing now, as I said, I'm doing this because I want to practice expressing my views and those type of thing, because in any type of achievement it's, or well, at least in most type of achievement, it's crucial to make people understand you. Even Einstein had to write in language, mathematics or something, so people can actually understand him. Otherwise it's wasted, right? But yeah, I was discussing my own thoughts about achievement or what I wanted to achieve and how I viewed my progress and my abilities, and how important it is. How do you really have to have doubt? And it's good to have some doubt. I think it's good to have some doubt sometimes because it makes you realistic. But I've heard from another source that you should really. It's not good to. Well, for the issue for me is that many people they kind of if they have goals that are achievable in some sense, it is because my doubt is really not on, because if you have let's say that you want to lose say 20 pounds. You want to lose 20 pounds, and that goal, then it's really essential to believe in yourself and believe that you can achieve it and so forth. And if you want to, let's say, get an A on an exam, and really those kind of base achievements. But when it comes to really high ambitions and goals, it's not that I don't believe that I can achieve them in the sense of what I am trying to understand is, as I said, excessive self-regard and so forth, because it's quite common, like for example in when you're betting on golf and you're betting on, and you're you always overvalue your accomplishment when driving, or actually in my country, in Sweden, we did a famous survey of how many of the people that thought they were above average in driving cars, and 90% thought they were about average, and you can just hear from that people think more of themselves really, and they love it themselves, they think better of their family than it's what is objectively true, and what actually this is a lot of from what Charlie Munger talks about in his biases, excessive self-regard. But what he says in the end is that he first said fixing bad performance is a duty, and I also said that you really should try to be objective about where you're at really, and try to reevaluate your past and future performance and so forth. But then he says that it's also the odd thing that, because he says that it's a real tragedy that when people think that they will start a company and they fail totally because they thought too much of themselves. He said it's a tragedy. And what's interesting here is that I guess it is that what he's getting at is that I'm not sure, because it's really counterintuitive to all these entrepreneur things and all these people talking about a vision and try to achieve something. It's really against that in some sense. And he's even saying that, well, he says also that some people who think really high of themselves will achieve really, really high outcomes. And he also said after that actually pride justified pride is much better than, for example, false modesty, and he says that it is really justified pride is the best thing, really, because that makes you want to be good, I guess. That's what he says, but it's still hard for me to figure out, should I think that my goals are, that they are possible to achieve, and yeah, is it realistic really? I guess that's what have to figure out, and yeah, and I've always, as I said, been very ambitious and wanted to be like having straight A's and having all these type of things, and it's made me much better, but the question is, how much can you achieve? Because I'm not an Einstein, but my ambition is not really to make it in physics. I have other ambitions, and then those ambitions is much harder to evaluate. But I think I will stop quite soon, but one thought is that I try to understand really how to, I lost the thought, but it was something about maybe Charlotte Munger, but also really I don't remember. I have to think about it, but I'll stop with you here, and I hope you to see you next time.